Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. He's a Tony and four-time Emmy Award winner that includes a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor. He was the youngest producer at age 23 in history to win an Emmy Award. He has done numerous commercials and voiceovers for companies such as Pizza Hut, Toyota, Mountain Dew, GameStop, and others. He's best known for Ennis in 1883 and A Walk Among the Tombstones. His 18-year career has seen him portray Brett Sampson in the Broadway production of 13. He's a West Palm Beach native. Please welcome to the show, Eric Nelsen. Eric, how are you?
Hey, brother, I'm good. Glad to be here.
Yes, I am super excited to have you on the show. We're going to have some fun, tell some stories, and get into your journey and the whole ball of wax.
I love it. Yeah, I'm already so pumped up after that intro and that music, so I feel good.
All right, let's go here. Your grandfather trained horses. Your father was a horse trainer. Your mother was showing horses. You grew up wanting to be a cowboy, which I kind of understand there, but I also understand you wanted to be an astronaut. Where did that come from?
That's interesting. How did you find that?
I do a bunch of research on my guests all the time.
Oh man. Well, so I'm originally, I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, and, down there, the space center's there in Florida. And, I feel like NASA was such a big part of my upbringing just because, the whole state, I feel like, gathers together when NASA's doing something cool down there. And so from a really young age, I got to even see a couple rockets go up and such. And our school had a deal that they would bring us on field trips over there. And so it was just always in my life and world. And I just thought it was so cool, so out there, literally and figuratively. And it just always interested me. And of course, we grew up with horses, and I was around that culture as well. Nowhere near, the expertise of my character on 1883. But needless to say, I had been around the culture and around horses, and, of course, the little boy that always watched Westerns and wanted to be a cowboy, and, kind of saw it in TV and movies and just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So hard not to want to, be a part of that world.
Your family moved to New York City at age 13. What kind of schooling did you have, and when did you decide that you wanted to be an actor?
So when I moved to Manhattan at 13, I got into a performing arts school called Professional Performing Arts School. And it's basically, if you've ever seen the movie Fame, that's what it is. Okay. It's that school. And so they tailor to children and kids who are professionally working in our field. So what they do is they supply tutors when you're on set or if you're at the show. They really cater to make it work so you could have your professional life, and then when you weren't filming, you could have your school life as well. And we would get classes focused on our major, almost like college, throughout middle school and high school. So I'd get acting classes throughout the day, dance classes, singing classes, and it was just the coolest thing in the world. But to answer your question, so coming from Florida, we got the opportunity to move to New York because my little brother, actually, him and I were at a local talent competition in Florida, and somebody scouted him and was like, hey, they're casting Chip in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. We think you'd be perfect. He's 6 years younger than I am. And so we were like, oh, yeah, right. The town we'd go to and watch shows as tourists. There's no way we could be a part of that world. Well, anyway, they got him to fly up and they put him up and the whole thing, and he ended up getting the show. And so we were just going to come to let him do Beauty and the Beast on Broadway for a couple months and then go back to Florida. But the minute I got up there, I signed with his agent that he got for the show. And both of us, our first professional gigs ever auditioning for, we booked. And it was kind of off to the races. And so, this few months that we were going to move there for ended up being, I was in New York for 11 years. We never left because it was this snowball effect of work coming in and auditions and all these incredible opportunities that, were so blindsiding to us, but yet, so thrilling. And so we were like, well, we can't stop now. We got to keep this going.
Yes. Your family obviously is deep into the horse industry. Sounds like you and your brother were into acting and in being in plays and dancing and in that industry. Did they want you to follow in their footsteps, and did they support what you and your brother wanted to do?
Yeah, I do think there was this period of time where, because it's such a huge part of their world, the horse culture and all that, they were hoping we all of us kids would get into it and excited about it. And none of us got bit by the bug. I think it was one of those classic tales of, your parents are so into it, so you go the opposite direction. Just, subconsciously, you're like, oh, I have to do something else. That's their thing. And so that was very much the case. And they were totally cool with that. It didn't take long for them to realize like, oh, they just, they don't have it, or, the interest isn't there. And so I played hockey and tennis and soccer and basketball, and of course, acting, singing and dancing at the same time. I just kind of had my hand in all of it. It was all just so exciting to me. And, the funniest part is, so yes, we didn't get bit by the horse bug as kids, but then I ended up getting 1883, and I'm sure we'll get into all that. But just to preface it, I gave them a call after a couple of days at Cowboy Camp, working on the show. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I love it so much. I really wish I would have been more into it as a kid, and I totally get it now, but I had to figure it out on my own.
Cool. And folks, we are going to get to 1883. I know you guys are all dying to hear all about Ennis and Eric in that part. And we're going to get there, but I'm going to bring you to where he was before he got to 1883. What do you recall about 2006 playing Kevin Ross Marler on Guiding Light? And what did that do for you in opening your eyes to the industry?
Yeah, so that was my first on-camera television role. And it was playing the character, the role of a character who had been basically born onto this show and had been recast as, he'd get a little bit older, then they'd recast him, and then the character would get older, and so have you. And, Guiding Light is one of those, no longer on the air, but it was one of those shows that truly was one of the longest running shows in history. And it's so much so that it started on the radio at CBS before it was even on television. It started as a radio show.
That's
Guiding
crazy.
Light. Yeah. And then it got on the air, and it became, one of the most iconic soap operas in the history of soaps. And it was my, intro into this insanely wonderful and upside down industry. And that was one of, the opening eye moments for me of like, wow, I'm doing this. I want to be doing this. And I'm looking at the actors around me who have been doing this show for decades. And I'm like, I want to be them. This is way too much fun. How am I here, first of all? And how do I keep getting to be here? And so that was it. That was my eye opening, into the TV world. And I was hook, line, and sinker, caught the minute I was on set.
Were you contracted to play Eric Van der Woodsen in Gossip Girl, and then Warner Brothers found out you were only 15 and canceled the contract?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'll never forget the moment I get called into my agent's office to sign all the contracts, and it was this big. They had me signed for 10 years. If the show was going to run for 10 years, that's how long I had to commit to them. And so I was like, this is my big break. I'm so excited. I'd actually booked another pilot that year called Babylon Fields for CBS, which was like this zombie pilot a little bit before its time, didn't get picked up. But then like 5 years later, the whole Walking Dead thing came out. And, I just think it was a little bit before. So I remember turning down the Babylon Fields to do Gossip Girl, of course, because it already had the books behind it, and so excited. And then I'll never forget the phone call, my agent calling me, and, Warner Brothers basically said, he's got to portray sexual activity on television, and, we need him to be 17 for this. And it was just all these legality issues, and basically completely pulled the contract from under my feet. And pretty sure I cried on the floor for a week straight after that moment. But it was also a big reality check into how this industry works. Mm-hmm. Even when you have the job, you don't have the job. Even when you film it, you may not make it onto the screen. They may cut you out, and, you're telling all these people you're in this cool movie, and yet they watch it. They're like, no, you're not. Where are you? It's like, I swear, guys, I swear I was in this thing. So, it's just one of those things that our industry, unfortunately, is, our fate is all in the hands of somebody else. And so if if something, turns awry, or, they have a change of heart, or what have you, nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. So that was a big wake up call.
I'm sure that was also a moment where, did you second guess being in the industry at that time?
So yes and no. So the good news was I was then able to go do Babylon Fields for CBS. And so I was like, okay, wipe the tears off. Like, it's going to be okay. I got this other show. Zombies are cool too. And of course it didn't get picked up. So I was like, you get all excited, you get on this other project, and then like, oh yeah, but actually we're not going to order it to series. So it was kind of just another tease. So then it was like another pain set in. But I also was fortunate and grateful because, even to be booking these pilots is incredibly difficult. And so I understood that. But it was, especially as a young teenager, it's so confusing, and it's, is it me? Am I wrong? What did I have to, what did I do wrong? How can I fix myself to make them actually want me despite age or despite this? And, really there's nothing, it's all out of your control. It has nothing to do with you. But at that age, it's hard to comprehend that and kind of come to that understanding. So it was a punch to the gut, but I loved what I was doing so much that I was like, brush it off. It was never a quit moment. It was, okay, that hurt, but where do I find a Band-Aid, and how do I, heal this up and try to do it again?
2010 to 2020, you produced the Amazon web series, The Bay, and played Daniel Garrett. It won 3 daytime Emmys. When did you decide to get into producing, and what was this project all about, and what did it mean to you?
So I got into producing right before I joined The Bay. I was working on a TV show called All My Children, which was another long-running soap that went off the air, and then they brought it back for Hulu, and that's the version I was on. It was kind of the re-envisioned, imagined version back when Hulu was something most people didn't understand or understand the concept of online television. It made no sense to people. And I was on that show, and one of the actresses who came on to do a guest star was like, hey, I work at Tribeca Films. I know this young filmmaker who's developing this story about this cross-country runner. You'd be perfect to play this lead role. It's still in the developmental stages, but if you're interested, I'd love to set up a meeting. So long story short, I meet with the writer, and I was like, hey, since this is early on in the process, I'd love, if possible, to come on as a producer to, have creative control. I was very much the title character in this film, and so it meant a good deal to me to make sure the supporting cast we clicked with, and I really wanted to learn the other side of the industry on how things come to be. As an actor, we show up, our makeup's done for us, everything's done for us. All we do is show up and say the lines. And I was like, but how does it get to that point? What do people have to go through to get it to that point? I needed to learn, and so that was a vehicle that I was able to learn all of that on. And so I had just finished producing the film, got to hire all my best friends, because as a producer, you can do fun stuff like that. Yep. And you work with people you know and love and trust. I worked with my wife, and at the time she wasn't my wife yet, but got to work with everybody I loved, which was so cool. And I was like, I want to do more of that. That's fun. And so I went to LA to present at the Daytime Emmys as a part of All My Children. And the creator of The Bay walked up to me and he said, hey, you were my favorite part of the show. I've got this web series. At the time I thought All My Children was one of the only web series out there. He's like, no, we actually, we're doing the web thing as well. We see an opportunity here. And he's like, we'd love to offer you a role in the show. I said, well, I would love that, but if I could come on as a producer too, I just finished this film and I'm really into it. I would love to have some sort of creative control and a say in any part of the creative process. And he was like, absolutely. And that year was the first year we ended up winning the Emmy. And so it was just this kind of snowball effect from there. And it just kept, it was this little engine that could, and it kept growing and growing. And I think I won, we won for the show 3 years in a row. The first 3 years I was involved with it, and I was just like, wow, this is more than I ever could have imagined in a lifetime. And then ended up, getting submitted for supporting actor. and winning that on the show. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like this little web series that, had a shoestring budget in the beginning has now grown into this real show and making a real mark in our industry. And then we started filming overseas. We got to film in London and Belgium and Puerto Rico. And, we got an international distributor. So then things just started unraveling from there. And it's just been this consistent job that has kind of woven together all my other work. And whenever I'm done with something, I can always go back to it. So that's been really nice to kind of have in my back pocket. And, it's been such a blessing. And Gregory Martin, the creator, director, producer of the whole thing, has just been an incredible man to me and in the industry. And so it's been one of those, consistent blessings in my life that I'm very grateful for.
Sounds like to me you have a real deep gratitude and passion to produce.
I do. And I think the most thrilling part of it for me is you get to work with the people that you know and trust, and, you can tailor it the way you want to. We've seen it a lot in Adam Sandler's work. He hires all of his buddies. You'll see all the same guys in his movies. Judd Apatow does the same thing. And, there's a number of directors and producers and writers out there that they just keep rotating. Taylor Sheridan, who wrote and, directed 1883 and Yellowstone and, all these great shows. You'll see a lot of the same actors on all of his stuff. Because once you build that chemistry and that trust and that relationship, and you know what you're going to expect from the people, it's like, you're only going to make great product because you know what to expect.
How did the role for A Walk Among the Tombstones get presented to you, and how did that casting process work?
So again, I was filming all my children, and I was kind of playing this very preppy, all-American, comes from a lot of money, character on the show. And for Walk Among the Tombstones, it was this dark, edgy, gritty film. The character was this punk with these piercings all over his face. I was like, this is awesome. It's so opposite of what I'm playing right now. I want to do this movie. And so I auditioned and, went through the whole callback, multiple callbacks. And I actually went in there. I remember I went into my audition, disguising myself completely. I was like, I can't let them see AJ Chandler when I walk in the room, which was my character on All My Children. They have to see Howie. They have to see the character that I'm going to be playing in this movie. And so I went in there with a vision in mind of who this character was. And so I put piercings on my face and, made really grungy hair and the look. And I didn't smoke cigarettes, but I think I went outside and pretended to smoke 4 cigarettes before I went out there. So I stunk, my clothes were reeking of cigarettes. And I was like, this is who this guy is. And so I think I convinced them that I was this role. Meanwhile, I was not whatsoever. But it worked, and it got me the job, and I got to work with Liam Neeson, which was so cool. And the craziest part about filming that, we filmed in the lobby of this apartment complex on 45th Street in Manhattan. I happened to be living in the apartment building across the street from where we were filming this movie.
Seriously?
Ironically, at the time, I think she was my fiance. My fiance could look out the window of our apartment and watch us filming down there in the street. Which, that doesn't happen. You're never in your backyard, you're somewhere random and way out of the way. And so that was crazy.
Before we get all into 1883, were you a fan of Yellowstone already?
I was a huge fan. So my wife was a massive fan and had been watching it from season 1. I didn't start it until the pandemic hit. That was kind of my pandemic binge show. So I was able to just start it and not stop until I got all the way through, which was really fun. And I was, completely in love with it. I think I knew I was going to love it from the moment I heard about it. But I was like, I really have to commit time to this. And I just didn't have it. And so finally, one of the silver linings of the pandemic, we got to catch up on all our movies and TV shows. And so that was it for me. And it was, the best thing I'd ever seen. And so I was completely in love with it. My whole family had watched it. Everybody I knew loved the show and was heavily invested. And so when the audition came up for it, there was a lot of pressure from everyone I knew to be like, you have to get on this. Like, this is, if there was something made for you, this is it. You know, I'm sorry, but if this doesn't work out, you should rethink what you're doing, because nobody else should get this but you. And of course that it never works that way. You always think you're right for something and it goes to somebody else. And, you know, it's not your vision, it's somebody else's. So it's hard to ever know that if you're actually right for what is being cast. But this one happened to work out, and I had a lot of happy family members.
I'll bet you did. Listeners, if you have not seen 1883, I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, there's going to be some spoilers coming up. If you haven't watched 1883, please go do so. And if you are not a fan of Yellowstone, and you've watched 1883, go watch Yellowstone. They're two separate entities. 1883 is the prequel to Yellowstone, but they're still, it's a completely separate show, a different storyline, and I think you'd really enjoy it. Eric, how did you first hear of this project for 1883? And I understand, did you audition for Wade first before you were casted for Ennis?
Yes, I did actually. So I got how I audition for all my stuff. You know, my agent or manager will send me an email with all the information and saying, hey, here, look, there's this show that's casting. They want to see you for it. You know, here is the character breakdown. Here's who involved. You know, they really give you a rundown of everybody listed who's already involved. And, you know, they send you a mini script. You call them sides in the industry. And so I read the sides, and then I believe there wasn't even a full episode attached. It was just like 2 scenes from episode 1 was in there. And originally they thought I was right for the role of Wade. And so I did the audition at home. I filmed myself. I sent it to LA. And because at the beginning of the pandemic, we actually moved to Fort Worth, Texas to get out of LA and to kind of be around family. We had just had our daughter. And so, you know, LA was just scary and we didn't have family there. So we were like, let's get out of there. Let's go to Texas so we can at least quarantine with everybody we know and love. Mm-hmm. And so I send the tape to LA, and normally this process kind of takes a bit, you know, it could be weeks, it could be days. You never really know, but they wrote back, I think the same day, oh my gosh, love him, but can he read for Ennis instead? He's much more right for Ennis. And so they resent me the material with, you know, kind of a little breakdown of who Ennis was. Again, I still hadn't seen a full script yet, but I remember emailing a friend of mine. I was like, hey, there's interest for this show. I know it has something to do in the Yellowstone universe because Taylor Sheridan's attached to it. They weren't saying anything more than that other than it's called 1883. And I saw Sheridan was directing, and it obviously had this vibe of this, you know, Western. And so I was like, I don't know if it's related to Yellowstone or if it's a new version or what this is, but this is really cool and not my alley. And so I want to make sure I do as great as I possibly can. So I emailed an agent friend that I knew in LA at a really, really, you know, one of the top agency in the world. And I was like, hey, there's no script involved, but I know you have connections. Can you email around seeing if somebody has this script so I can read it before I tape for Ennis? Because I need to put my best foot forward. And he emails me back in 5 seconds. Here it is. I was like, okay, nice. Good to have friends in high places.
That's right.
And so I got to read the full script, which really gave me an understanding of the tone and the whole idea of this show. And so then I taped for Ennis. And again, I think it was the next day. They were like, we love him. Can we hold him? Basically, you know, we can't commit to a contract right now, but if anything else comes up that could conflict with our filming dates, please let us know right away, because we kind of want first right of refusal kind of thing. Without committing all the way, we want a verbal, you know, let you understand that we really like him and we just hope nothing else comes up in the way where we would lose him. And so they had me on this hold for a couple months. And I kind of let the show out of my mind. I was like, man, it's not going to happen. Meanwhile, there were so many, you know, eggs they had to get in a row to organize all this that it just took them time to line it up. Apparently, they always knew I was the one they wanted, but they had to, you know, make sure, what did I look like next to the guy they think is right for Wade versus who's Elsa versus, you know, there's so many factors. And so they need to get all of that in line first before they send the contracts out. And so I assumed they had moved on and went, Zac Efron or somebody way cooler got the role. And, that's just that. And it wasn't the case. And I remember one day I get a call from Taylor Sheridan on my phone, and he basically tells me, loved your audition. Can I, want to hear a little more about your story? Who are you? What's your experience with horses? And so I got into it. And by the end of the conversation, he's like, all right, we're going to start cowboy camp in a couple of weeks. We want you for the role. And so he was the one that told me I got the show, which was so cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And it just right away showed me how involved he is and how much he really cares about all of this. Oftentimes you get a big name and, they're involved, but they're not as personally connected to everybody on set. They kind of, puppeteer from afar. Taylor's in the trenches with you. He's there every step of the way. And, just getting that phone call alone was my first, kind of insight into how he operates and how personal he makes everything he does. And that was really, really cool and unique. And that never really happens. So I knew right away, I was like, okay, this is going to be special.
And you got an extra week of cowboy camp. You actually had 3 weeks in comparison to everybody else having 2 with Taylor. How many hours a day was cowboy camp?
So I got lucky because, and here's again, when I was telling you about a Walk Among the Tombstones and filming on the same street that I happened to live on, which was so rare. Well, this is even more rare. So as I said, we moved to Fort Worth, Texas at the top of the pandemic, not telling anybody in LA that I left because I didn't want them to think I wasn't available or was, a lot of actors left the industry at the pandemic because they just, it was kind of their out and they weren't making money and they were struggling. So they had to go find other jobs. I didn't want anyone to think that that was what I was doing. So we went to Texas in secret and I was like, if something comes up, I'll just fly right back to LA. So they didn't know. And I told, when we were talking on the phone to Taylor, I was like, I'm actually living in Texas because he was saying that the show films in Texas. And I was like, well, where in Texas? Because I might be there. I'm not sure. And it turned out that my first episode filmed 15 minutes away from where we were living in Fort Worth, Texas. Random. One of those God things, right place, right time. Like it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's a feeling I rarely have gotten in this industry. And so that was amazing. And so because of that, Taylor Sheridan, who lives down here, he lives in Weatherford, which is 30 minutes from my house, was like, hey, you're already here. Come out to my ranch a week early and let's get to work. All the other actors will be here next week, but if you're available and around and want to get a head start, come on over. So I got a lot of one-on-one time with Taylor and working. Basically, I think I'd show up right when the sun was coming up, and we'd hit it from morning until afternoon, and we'd just be riding all day. And this was in the middle of the summer in Texas, granted. Oh. So it was 110, 115 degrees most days, and we're out there in the beating sweat, and it was challenging and rewarding and exhilarating all at the same time, and really, really pushed us extremely hard because that's what was going to be required when the cameras were rolling. And even more so, we've got all these 1,800 clothes on, the layers on leather, on this, on that, on chaps, on. So we're not only in the 110 degree heat once the cameras are rolling, but then you add on all this costume on top of it. And so that's another, 15 pounds just right there of stuff and the guns and everything. And so, the cowboy camp was a real eye opener and wake up call to what was going to be expected of us. But then when we got on set, it was just another added element. So, it was to say any actor could have gone up and done that is, not the case. It was extremely difficult. And I'm so proud of all of my co-stars because we all were, head down, charging away, and we were in it together. And, let's just fight and claw and, get gritty with this because that's what that's what he expects of us. And that's what we know will make the best product. And so I think it showed.
I'm going to get a question in regards to the elements in a minute, but did you have a pinch me moment and you look around and go, well, there's Sam Elliott, there's Tim McGraw, and there's Faith Hill, and there's LaMonica Garrett, and I'm here?
Oh, every single day. I still, Tim texts me all the time. And when I see his name pop up on my phone, it's like the butterflies come right back to my stomach. Like it's never going to get old. These are people I idolized my whole life. And so, every day was a pinch me moment. And I caught myself saying, wow, how can it get better than this? Every single day. The actor who played Wade and I would literally look at each other at the end of the day and be like, no day is going to top this one. It's impossible. What we just did and what we just did next to these people, like, tomorrow can't get better. And then it would. Something else unbelievable would happen. And, so it was constant. Constantly, we were just looking around, pinching ourselves. And I'd see my name, on my cast chair, sitting next to Tim and Sam. And, at one time, Billy Bob Thornton was in there and Tom Hanks was in there. And, we've had all these iconic superstars come in and out of the show. And so it was just always, am I alive? Is this really actually happening? Or when am I waking up from this? Like, I was confused and grateful and all of the things every single day.
It's been talked about many times about the harsh elements that the cast went through and through filming and what that was like. But did you reflect back and think, how did the people back in 1883 handle death and disease and life on the trail?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, it was just, it's mind blowing. It's, if someone told you that that's what they did, like, yeah, right. Nobody could survive. No, who in their, that's impossible. Well, it is. And, we had to do a lot of training, even on those wagons, trying to ride 1 mile, sitting on that plank on one of those wagons, let alone across the entire country. It's excruciatingly painful. I don't even know how it's possible and how these people did it. And before the show started, I'd find myself in moments where even as stupid as getting in my car in the middle of summer and it taking 5 minutes to warm up, and I'd be there complaining. I'm like, what? I'm hot. I'm sweaty. This is awful. And then I started the show and I was like, I can't complain about a single thing when I'm getting in my automobile with, central air in my house and the whole thing. I'm like, I can never complain again, because what these people went through and how anyone survived it is mind blowing.
How many people were on set on a given day?
A lot. There were days where there was 1,000 people on set. Between the crew and the cast and the horse wranglers and the cow wranglers and, and the COVID people. And I mean, everybody, there was a lot of moving parts and the biggest production I've ever been involved with. And Sam Elliott said the same thing to me. He's like, I've been doing this a long time. I've never been a part of something this big. He's like, the amount of people and moving parts that this has, he's like, I'm telling you right now, it will never get bigger than this. And so I was like, okay, to hear it from him, that really, really tells me something.
Tim McGraw's character, John Dutton, says to you, when you profess your love for Elsa, to cradle Elsa's heart like an egg and make sure it doesn't crack. Can you talk about filming that moment? Because watching it on screen, it jumps off the screen at you a little bit like this is a big pivotal moment in the story.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I will say McGraw has 3 daughters of his own, mind you. And so, he was pulling from a place of experience and realism. And when he was giving my character a really hard time, he's known that moment with her boyfriends of his daughters. I almost wish he didn't have had daughters, because sometimes I really was feeling it from him. Like, this is too real, man. Like, I'm okay. I promise. And so he was really able to channel so much personal experience and emotions through all this. And so, finally, when we get to that line, and it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, I see that you guys are going to do this regardless of what I say and think about you. And it's a big moment as a father and as the boyfriend receiving it, as to, if you are going to do this, you better fight with everything you have to protect her and love her, because this is my baby. This is my life. This is, I'd imagine my daughter's only 2. So it's scary for me to even try to think about being in this situation one day, but it will happen. And, I could just say from the absolute overwhelming love that I have for her already, to imagine handing her to somebody else is scary, and all of the feelings. And so, I can understand it to a sense. But it was a big turning point. And I think from that moment on, the respect was there. It was the understanding of, I will be the man you need for her. And so that raised my shoulders up, my chest came out a little bit because I really did get to step up into that position, and he was allowing for that to happen. And granted, we had some trials in a relation before then. And, there was some turbulence getting to that moment, but needless to say, it all worked out in the end. And, I'll take some blood and some bruises to get the one I want.
What did Eric Nelsen do when you read that Ennis was written off the show?
Yeah. So I knew prior to filming. I did not know when I was auditioning because all I got to read was the first script. But of course they were all already written and the storyline was set. And I remember going to Taylor's one night and he's like, "Have you read the rest of the scripts yet?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. I would love to." And so he sent them all to me. And the next day I show up and I'm like, I think there was a typo in episode 5. It said that, we finally fall in love with these two and then he's gone. Like, what, are you sure? Like, was Wade maybe supposed to get shot somewhere in there? Or he was like, no, keep reading, you're going to see it. It's so pivotal for her storyline. Mm-hmm. And it really is the turning point of the entire series. And he's like, trust me when I tell you, it has to happen this way. And it's going to be the most talked about thing of the show, probably. So you'll be thanking me one day. He's like, now I understand why you're not. And he was right. I mean, it became, everybody was talking about what happened, and people were furious and people didn't understand. And, they wanted to see Elsa and Ennis through. And then as you keep watching and more episodes were rolling out, it made sense. And then of course, by the end, everybody's dying anyway. So it's like, much rather be the first one everybody talks about than, kind of blended in at the end. But, it mainly was Taylor's way of showing how those times were and how, vulnerable everybody was at every single second. And the fact that it took 5 episodes for someone to go in the first place was surprising to me after I had seen it all and read it all. And so it really just was a little taste of what life was like. And, the things you held most dear and precious to you were obviously vulnerable at every single step of the way. And you never wanted to take a single second for granted on the trail, so that was, it was rough and tough, but I think it really added to the realism of what we were telling in our story.
What was the most difficult scene for you personally to film?
It's interesting because when I tell you, it's going to sound like not difficult. It's going to be like, oh, how is that hard? And I'll explain it. The hardest scene for me to film was when I was laying there dead, which sounds like, well, you just close your eyes and pretend like you're not with us anymore. How is that difficult compared to, pushing cattle through a river on horseback and getting in a full fist fight scene with Tim McGraw and all these other crazy things that I got to do. Well, the reason it was so difficult was I had to lay there, and we did this take over take. I mean, we spent almost an entire day on this dying scene of her losing her mind on top of me, screaming in my ear and pulling at my clothes. And there was so much raw emotion that she was going through in that scene that it took every ounce of me to fight back my emotions, to not succumb to tears, to not succumb to feeling the emotion that she was giving. I mean, everybody on set was crying when she was filming this. Cameramen, sound guys, the other actors, and I'm supposed to lay there emotionless. And that was really like the last thing I got to film as well, or one of the last things. And so we had all of these months and months and months of chemistry built up and relationship and experiences. And it was all, kind of finishing in this moment. And I had to act as if none of it affected me whatsoever. So to not sit there and cry when the person that you've been madly in love with on the show all these months is going through grief of loss and all this was really difficult for me. And for that reason, I would say it was the most challenging scene, even though I didn't have to say a word or even open my eyes, but I had to find a place to shut off all emotion, which as an actor is really hard to do because we're so full of it. We're full of emotion. That's what we thrive on is tapping into our emotions. And so that was difficult for me. And, feeling her pain and just being like, oh, okay, suck it up. Or, not like suck it up, but like, okay, it is what it is. You are really, really struggling. And I'm going to pretend like everything is just peaceful. It was really hard.
Flipping to the complete opposite. Do you have a good so-called campfire on-set funny 1883 story for my listeners?
I think, gosh, every day there was something funny that happened because not only are we having to battle all the different personalities from the people, we had animals that we were battling personalities with, horses who want to do their own thing. Sometimes, they're big animals and they're stronger than you. And sometimes they are just tired of doing what you're asking them to do and they're not going to do it. And then you had the cattle that had their own personalities. And so we were all trying to juggle this circus at times and the weather on top of that, which we couldn't control. And so there were days, things would just happen all the time. One time we were filming, and we're supposed to be pushing these cattle across the Brazos River. And I just look over to James Landry Abair, who plays Wade, and his horse just decides to just stop and just tilt over and completely just as if he wanted to shut his legs off and take a nap in the water. And so he just fell over and James flies off his horse. He's in the middle of the river. All the cows are around him swimming and the horses and it's freezing, mind you. And so he just looks like he's like drowning in a pool, and all the clothes are weighing him down and the whole thing. And so I remember we all, help James, get James. And so we get him out of the water and, he's like shivering and the bones are clanking and it's just like this whole thing. And we're like, all right, well, we got to do it again. So, get back on the horse. And I just remember looking at him and I don't know how they edited it out. But like his teeth were chattering so fast, I could hear it from across the river. And I was like, how? And he had like, I think some dialogue, like we're supposed to be hooping and hollering at the cows. And he's like, and he like was wailing like a little girl or something. And so it was just hilarious. And none of us could keep a straight face. And although he was going through it in cold, something about it was still so comedic to us. And he was laughing too. It wasn't just us laughing at him because he was cold, but it was just one of those moments. It was like, no matter what happened, we're not going to get this shot. Like he is, we got to put him in front of a heater and we're all just, just dying laughing. And so things like that happened all the time. And it wasn't, it was the animal that made it happen. It wasn't us. And so it's kind of just funny how, we really had to tailor our performances to these animals some of the times, which you never get that on any set. So that was cool and funny and kept you on your toes. And, you never knew what to expect day to day, which was really great. Any chance we see Eric Nelsen on any other of the Taylor Sheridan universe projects coming up? It's a great question. I'm not at the liberty to say publicly, but I will say that, Taylor does like to work with the same people. And I told Taylor, if he hired me for the rest of my career, I would be happy only working for him. And so I would jump at an opportunity to work with him again. And I really hope that's going to be the case. And I would love it to, I would love that. That would be awesome. Hopefully it will. Hopefully it will. Yes. What has 1883 done for you personally? Career-wise, it's opened up so many doors for me. I signed with a huge new agency from the show because they saw my work on the show and wanted to work together. And that's just been kind of a game changer. I'm getting all these movie offers left and right now. It's cut out a lot of the auditioning process for me, which has been nice. They're sending offers a lot right now, which is just, not something I've been used to. But I guess it's, you get on one show that the world receives so well, and the industry just starts bending over backwards for you for the first time, as opposed to us contorting ourselves in any way we can to try to please the industry. You know, please hire me. I need this job. Please put me on your show. Now it's like they're coming to me, and for a second, you know, I'm also realistic into how the industry works. And, you know, there are times when somebody can be on the top of their game and then you just don't see them for a few years. Like, things happen. So I'm just trying to be as grateful for these opportunities right now as I can be, and understand that it may not last forever, but while it is, I'm trying to take full advantage of it. I couldn't be happier. And I've got a couple films coming up that I'm going to be filming this fall that I'm excited about, as well as some other things coming in the works. So it's been great. And the doors that are opening really have been the most incredible part about this whole process. And I can kind of take a breath for a little bit. Like, things are going to be okay.
Let's wrap the show up with this question. If somebody would come to you and said, what is the dream role you'd like to play? What is that?
Wow. It's interesting. You know, I would love to be a lead on another Taylor Sheridan show, hands down, in any capacity. If it was on a Western, that'd be really, really cool. You know, he's got the 4.6s coming up, and to me, that would be probably the coolest gig I could possibly get. But aside from that, you know, throughout my career, I always said that Aaron Paul's role on Breaking Bad would have been probably a role I would have done anything to try to play. And I just think one of my favorite shows of all time. And so, out of the Western world, I'd say, you know, getting to do something just edgy and gritty, kind of like a Breaking Bad, would be on the top of my list.
That's cool. Listeners, if you want to connect with Eric, go to Instagram, Eric Nelsen Official. It's spelled Nelsen. And I'll put a link in the show notes. You can just click on it and then click follow, and you can get connected with Eric there. Eric, thanks for taking time and being on Before the Lights. I've had a ball here talking with you.
Hey, brother, thank you so much. This was so much fun for me as well, and hope we can do it again soon.
Yes. Listeners, follow me on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. And if you're looking for merch, the new water bottles are out. Go to beforethelightspod.com/merch. That's beforethelightspod.com/merch. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.